Welcome to a journey through geopolitics and its unexpected battlegrounds. Today we dive into a story that intertwines history, power struggles, and a crisis that is claiming lives daily: the opioid crisis. In the heartland of America, a silent war is waged, not with guns or bombs, but with pills. Opioids, a class of drugs that includes the illegal drug heroin, synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, and pain relievers available legally by prescription, have become the unseen enemy. It all began in the late 90s with the approval of a little pill named oxycodone. Hailed as a miracle for pain relief, it was quickly adopted across the medical field. But with its widespread use came an unforeseen consequence: addiction. What started as a health solution spiraled into a health crisis. The gray market for these drugs flourished, and addiction rates skyrocketed. The toll of this crisis is heavy, with a significant number of overdose deaths occurring each year in the United States. But how does this crisis connect to geopolitics and international power struggles? Let's dive deeper. The US and China, two superpowers in a complex relationship with aspects of trade, technology, and now drugs. Yes, you heard right. Drugs, specifically opioids, have become a significant part of the narrative between these two nations. China plays a substantial role in the production of opioids, particularly fentanyl, a highly potent synthetic pill that has caused a significant number of overdose deaths in the US. Despite promises to crack down on the production of these illicit substances, they continue to find their way into America, often smuggled through Mexico and other routes. The US drug police have been striving to halt this deadly inflow, but the battle is far from won. Now, this situation might seem somewhat familiar to those with a keen interest in world history. It bears a striking resemblance to the historical opium wars of the mid-19th century. Back then, China was the one trying to block opium imports from the British Empire, but was overpowered by a British-led coalition. This led to a significant increase in opium addiction in China, a dark period that has left lasting scars on the nation's psyche. Fast forward to the present, and it's the US grappling with a serious opioid crisis. But this time the roles are reversed. China is the producer and the US is the consumer, struggling to curb the inflow of these dangerous substances. It's like a modern-day opium war, but with the players switched and the stakes even higher. This current scenario, with trade and drugs intertwined, is shaping the complex relationship between the US and China in unexpected ways. It's not just about economics or military power anymore. The drug trade, particularly the trafficking of opioids, is becoming a significant factor in their geopolitical chess match. This modern opium war is shaping geopolitics, but what are its implications? In the face of crisis, leaders frame narratives. For Biden, it's democracy versus autocracy. This isn't just about political posturing, it's about addressing one of the most devastating health crises in recent memory: the opioid epidemic. With thousands of lives lost and families torn apart, the stakes couldn't be higher. But what does democracy have to do with it? Well, in a democratic society, power is vested in the people. They have the right to hold their leaders accountable for the decisions they make, including those that contribute to public health crises like the opioid epidemic. If a government fails to protect its citizens from such threats, the people have the power to vote them out of office. This, Biden suggests, is a key weapon in the fight against the opioid crisis. Now let's contrast this with autocracy, where power is concentrated in the hands of a single ruler or party. In such systems, leaders are often immune to public opinion, making it much harder to hold them accountable. For instance, China, a leading producer of fentanyl, a lethal synthetic opioid, has been accused of not doing enough to crack down on its illicit production and trafficking. This, critics argue, is largely due to the autocratic nature of the Chinese government, which is less responsive to international pressure than a democratic government might be. Biden's narrative of democracy versus autocracy isn't just about political ideology, it's about the very real, very human consequences of these systems of governance. It's about the lives lost to opioid addiction and the families left in ruins. It's about a global power struggle with human lives hanging in the balance. But as we'll see, this struggle isn't just about governments and their policies, it's about the complex interplay of geopolitics, trade, and drugs, with each piece of the puzzle influencing the others in ways that can be hard to predict. The US-China relationship, for example, is fraught with tension, with trade wars and disputes over intellectual property rights further complicating efforts to combat the opioid crisis. In this global power struggle, the stakes are high, lives hang in the balance. These aren't just words, they're a stark reminder of what's at stake in the fight against the opioid crisis, a fight that's as much about politics and power as it is about public health. As we navigate this new terrain, understanding the intersection of geopolitics and public health is crucial. The opioid crisis, a public health emergency, is intricately tied to international relations. A future scenario may see nations collaborating to control the production and trafficking of opioids, just as they unite to tackle other global challenges like climate change or terrorism. The fight against addiction is not isolated to one country. It's an international endeavor. It requires a nuanced understanding of global power dynamics, economic interests, and societal needs. In the face of the opioid crisis, nations must not only address the supply issue, but also focus on demand. This means investing in mental health, social support systems, and education to prevent addiction. The battle against opioids also calls for the sharing of intelligence and resources, enhancing border security, and promoting research and development in alternatives to opioid-based medications. Indeed, it is only through international cooperation, mutual understanding, and shared responsibility that we can hope to stem this tide. The opioid crisis is not just America's problem, it's a global issue that requires a global solution.